We're looking now at Genesis 31. This is a continuation of Jacob's time with Laban, and we know that he's been there. Now, he agreed to, when he arrived with Laban, and in order to marry his daughters, well, he was hoping just one daughter, but it ended up being two. He had to stay there for how many years, if you remember?
7.
14.
14, yeah, 7 for one, 14 for both, right? So he works 7 years, then he can marry one of them. He thought it was Rachel. It turns out to be Leah. He gets a little trick played on him, and then he serves a week, and then for 7 more years, he can marry, he can have Rachel if he continues on for 7 more years. So he's there for 14 years. We're told later on in this chapter that it will be a total of 20 years that he's been there. So before he gets to return. So this is kind of completing his time with Laban. It's a strange story. There's a lot of things happening in it. And the Genesis doesn't tell us a lot about the motives of people involved, the details of why things happen the way they do. However, I want you to read it from a different perspective, because a lot of times our focus is on Jacob and then Rachel and Leah and Laban, as if those are the main characters. But really, I'd like you to look at it from a different angle, and that is to see what the Lord is doing in this, what you learn about the Lord in this chapter, and also what you learn about the gods. Because Laban, we find out, if you remember, he learns by divination. Remember we learned that last time? That he is actively engaged with other gods. And we learn in this chapter, we'll see that his gods are even stolen by Rachel. And so there's this battle going between the Lord and the gods, and the Lord working through Jacob, and the gods working through Laban. Kind of like what you saw, what you will see later on in the Exodus with Moses and Pharaoh. And it's not just a judgment on Egypt, but it's a judgment on the gods of Egypt too.
Yeah.
And so this is sort of what's happening. When you look at it from this angle, some really interesting things are revealed. Again, some strange things about Rachel come up in this, and what that's about, we're not even sure, but we'll take a look and see where the Lord leads us here through this. So verses 1 to 3. How about this? Teresa, why don't you read the first one for it's a short passage for your eyes here. How's that? How's that looking here? Verses 1 to 3.
Greg, could you make it just a little bit bigger, please?
All right. I'm gonna lose my place, but I will make it bigger for you here.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's just always, I don't know why it keeps jumping around like that, but it just does.
It's the craziest thing.
All right. So, okay, how about that?
Great. Now Jacob heard that the sons of Laban were saying, Jacob has taken all that was our father's, and from what was our father's, he has gained all his wealth. And Jacob saw that Laban did not regard him with favor as before. Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your kindred, and I will be with you.
Okay. Let's go recap a little bit about what happened here. That Jacob hears that the sons of Laban are upset with him, and that Laban is upset with him. Why is Laban and his sons so upset with Jacob?
Well, I mean, Laban basically played a trick on Jacob, stealing what was supposed to be his in the sheep, and Jacob turned around and, knowing how things worked, got most of those sheep, a lot more of the new sheep in his name.
Yeah.
And so they're thinking he stole the father's sheep.
Yeah. So Laban's scheme here backfired. What was Laban's scheme? What was he trying? What did he remember what he did? He said, how will we pay Jacob for all the work that he's done?
He was going to go with the spotted and striped animal.
So Laban, so Jacob's wages would be the spotted and speckled sheep. Okay. But then what does Laban do?
He has his sons remove them and take them 3 days away.
Yeah, Laban takes the spotted sheep and gives them to his sons and sends them away. So keeps them from, withholds them. So they're not, so Jacob will not be overseeing. So Jacob is going to be, his payment is going to be spotted sheep, but all the spotted sheep are in another flock. He has only just white sheep, which are all Laban's now, which means he's going to get nothing when the day is done. So this is now over a period of, I think it's going to be about 6 years. So as he's caring for them, but during this time, what happens?
Jacob takes advantage of genetics and matches up the sheep with whatever the recessive genes that would produce spotted sheep.
Yeah, somehow, I don't even know if it's genetics or if it was a
Spotted
strange
stick.
thing, but somehow Jacob finds a way to get the sheep to bear spotted what do they call
Awesome.
lambs, right? But I'm not even sure. I don't even know exactly how it happened here, but it's not something that was engineered in a lab. This was really kind of God's doing, but he sort of he finagles it somehow, and he gets them to
Bring-
mate at different times, and especially he tries to get the stronger ones to mate so that he can get the stronger. So, but in any case, it works. So that the result is that Jacob takes over, the flock. And ultimately, you can look at Jacob's silly ways of doing things, of striping the branches and so forth. But ultimately, this is from God. There's no other explanation for it. This is from God. Ultimately, you can, so let's pick it up there. So, but there is after I got to plug in my computer here for a second. Hang on. What's the response of Laban and his sons to this?
Not good.
Laban's response is that he no longer regards him with favor.
Does he think he's God or something?
With favor. So in a sense, what you see is Laban is sort of, he wavers in his, he's in this way, there's a faithlessness in him. 1 minute he's for him, then he's suddenly against him now. Now, in contrast, we read the next part. Remember, the focus for our time study is going to be on the Lord in all this. And what is the Lord speaks in this context here? What does the Lord say?
Well,
Time to go.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
time to go, right? Return to the land. And I will be with you, which is exactly the promise he gave him before. So one thing you'll see is there's the faithfulness of the Lord is really highlighted against the faithlessness of Laban. Laban receives him gladly, and as long as Jacob can do for him what he wants, he's happy with him. When things aren't going his way, he's upset with him and angry with him, and he's back and forth with him. But the Lord is consistent with him. Through all this time, I will be with you. He promised him at the beginning, and now it's time to return. And he says, I will be with you here as well. So that's where we'll pick up our next section here. Let's see. Jack, you want to get the next part here? This is 4 to 16. Or what if we can just let's
Okay.
just do half of that. 4 to 10. Let's do that.
So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah into the field where the flock was and said to them, I see that your father does not regard me with favor as he did before. But the God of my father has been with me. You know that I have served your father with all my strength. Yet your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. But God did not permit him to harm me. If he said, the spotted shall be your wages, then all the flock bore spotted. And if he said, the stripe be your wages, then all the flock bore stripe. Thus God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. In the breeding season of the flock, I lifted up my eyes, and I saw in a dream that the goats that mated with the flock were striped, spotted, and mottled.
All right, we'll stop right there for a second. We'll come back. So Jacob now speaks to Rachel and Leah. And he says some things here that I think are very important. Notice the contrast between their father and the God of my father. It says your father versus the God of my father. You can see that in verse 5. And what does he say about their father?
Cheated him.
Yeah, let's go through it here. Regarding Laban, your father. And even that phrase, your father, implies like he's supposed to be the one protecting you. He's supposed to be the one providing. He's supposed to be the one who is faithful in his love as a father. But what has happened here? Well, first thing we see is, as we mentioned before, he does not regard me with favor.
Yeah.
Okay, as he did before.
Mm.
And then he says, you mentioned it, Rob. He
Cheated him.
Change his wages 10 times.
yeah, he's cheated me and changed my wages 10 times.
Mm.
So you can see how it goes. It's like, remember, the wages are the sheep that are born. So as soon as a sheep is born, you look at it and you say, okay, that's Jacob's because it has spots. Or it doesn't have spots, so it's Laban's, and that kind of separation. And so at first, all the sheep are coming out spotted. And so Laban's like, all right, let's change the wages here. Now, all the spotted ones are going to be mine, and all the white ones are going to be yours. And then suddenly they're all white. And then it's like, well, no, that's not working. Let's go with the striped ones. They'll be your wages. And they're all striped. Everything, no matter how we changed it, it always came out the way. It's kind of like flipping a coin. It's like, all right, heads you win, tails you lose. Okay, heads. All right, enough of that. I think it's rigged. Now tails you win, and suddenly everything's tails. It just comes up that way, and you can see God is behind it. He's cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. I think that was the main things. And we see, but regarding now God, he says something about God.
God was with him.
My father, he says, oopsie, sorry. Where did I go here? This is regarding the God of my father. He says, your father has cheated, but he's been with me.
Didn't
And
allow him.
God did not
him.
permit him to harm me. And he's even taken away. He's the one has taken away
Mm.
the livestock and given them to me. So we have this dream he has, this is how Jacob knows this is the Lord's doing. Let's pick it up there. Verse Elizabeth, you want to get the next part? 11 to, well, actually start with
16.
10, 16. Yeah, go back to 10 again, 10 to 16.
Okay, let me see, find 10. In the breeding season of the flock, I lifted up my eyes and saw in a dream that the goats that mated with the flock were striped, spotted, and mottled. Then the angel of God said to me in a dream, Jacob, and I said, here I am. And he said, lift up your eyes and see. All the goats that mate with the flock are striped, spotted, and mottled. For I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and made a vow to me. Now arise, go out from this land and return to the land of your kindred. Then Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, is there any portion or inheritance left to us in our father's house? Are we not regarded by him as foreigners? for he has sold us, and he has indeed devoured our money. All the wealth that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and to our children. Now then, whatever God has said to you, do. And I have a quick question. What is malted?
Modeled.
Modeled.
I
Model,
think
what
it's
is
I would describe what modeling is. It's like a marbling kind of a thing. Is
Yeah.
Oh,
coloration.
okay.
It's marbling, like a marbling look.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
like
thank
if you
you.
look at somebody who's got modeling, they're like their skin is kind of
They-
purple, whitey, mixed.
Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So, all right. So he says, so he has this dream, Jacob's dream. And again, it calls back to the beginning of his story when he has that dream of remember the dream he had when he was in Bethel?
Mhm.
Yeah, the ladder that came
Yeah.
down to the earth.
Yeah, that ladder or that staircase from earth to heaven with the angels of God ascending and descending. And now he has another dream here, and the angel of God speaks to him.
Mm.
And says, it calls him Jacob by name, lift up your eyes and see. And what does this is really interesting. The angel of God speaks, and what does he say? Who is the angel of God?
Christophany?
Yeah, but how does he say about himself here? When the angel speaks to him, he says, Jacob, he says, here I am, and then he introduces himself. In verse
And the God of Bethel.
The God of Bethel.
and the God of Bethel. So the angel of God says, I am the God of Bethel. Now, what does angel mean?
Messenger.
Messenger.
Messenger, right? So here's the mystery of this is that you have a character, a messenger of God, someone sent from God who is saying very plainly to Jacob, I am God. I am the God of Bethel.
I have been told once that anytime it says the angel of God, it's talking about Jesus. And if it otherwise it says an angel of God.
Yeah, I would probably say, yeah, that's probably the case. At least every time we've seen it so far. Yeah. The angel of God, the one sent by God, he comes in a way that is that's God. I mean, that's just the way that Moses when he encounters the burning bush, it speaks about the angel of God there that appeared in that burning bush to him. Here we have this. I think it's clear. This is the second person of the Holy Trinity. This is the Son before he is incarnate as Jesus. He's appearing as this one. Lift up your eyes, see the goats, and notice what he says. I'm the God of Bethel, and I have seen. Where have we seen that? Where God says, I have seen.
Sodom and Gomorrah, for one thing.
Yeah. Yeah. There's another passage where he refers to God who sees me. You remember that one?
Hagar.
Yeah.
Yeah, when Hagar was sent off, when she was being mistreated and sent off, and God sees her. So he sees the suffering that Jacob is going through. And he says, now, and you made a vow to me there, and now arise and return to the land of your kindred. Okay.
Well, I think that line makes it really clear who he's speaking to. You made a vow to me.
Yeah.
Know
Yeah.
who Jacob made a vow to.
Yeah. 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 And again, why the writer of Moses, as he writes this, doesn't say God said to him in a dream. He says the angel of God says to him in a dream. So that's the mystery of this is these two gods, in a sense, the invisible God, and then the visible God whom he sends that we can see and interact with. We see that quite a bit.
What is
All right.
the pillar and the vow?
The pillar, that was an
No.
the pillar. He set up an
Jacob's
altar
ladder.
there, with the stone that was his pillow. If you remember, he
Yes.
went to bed and slept on a stone, And then I think that stone he used to make a pillar or an altar there and made a promise to God, if you remember.
Was that the part where he struggled with the angel all night and he ended up with an injured hip?
That's coming next chapter, I think.
Okay.
He has a
Pastor-
lot of interactions with angels, which is really interesting. There's a lot of supernatural things happening in these stories with Jacob. Yeah, Teresa.
You said angels were messengers, but doesn't Romans say that they're ministering angels as well? Aren't they all ministering angels?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, they serve. So the angels, again, when we talk about the heavenly beings, an angel is a messenger, someone who comes from heaven to earth. So like the cherubim are not technically angels because they don't interact in the earthly realms. They are the guardians of the throne. They remain in the heavenly realms. The spiritual beings who are sent that we encounter. So anytime someone encounters a spiritual being, you could say that's an angel because it's someone from a spiritual realm who's been sent into the physical realm here, typically with some kind of a message or some kind of a service. So angels oftentimes are used in two ways. We can speak of angels as all the spiritual beings can be referred to the angelic host, right? All the angels, anything that's a spiritual being. Or you can say more specifically, an angel is simply is a specific role of interacting. But there are all kinds of classes of supernatural beings in the Bible. There are powers and authorities. There are these princes, these sons of God, these all these different sorts kind of hierarchies, archangels, angels, cherubim, seraphim, you know, that serve different functions. So but when people interact with supernatural beings, we call them angels because they're entering into our realm and they're usually coming with a message or serving in some way. Yeah. All right. So I am the God of Bethel. Rachel and Leah respond to this.
It's like they're saying he's already disowned us, so what have we got to lose?
Yeah, Rachel and Leah are not happy with Dad. You know, and that really again shows Laban's unfaithfulness in contrast to look how God has provided for them. Everything they have is because God has provided for them. If they were left to the whims of Laban, they'd be slaves. They would have nothing. They would be in really trouble. And that's his daughters that he's treating this way. He's not a good man. Had left to us in our father's house. So he regarded as foreigners by their own father. He has sold us and he has devoured our money. And so they feel like God is just righting the wrongs here.
I have a quick question. I'm not justifying what the father did, but was it customary in those days to leave the inheritance to the sons before the daughters? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it would be to the sons, but there would be also a dowry that they would pay for
the daughters.
For the daughters too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And they lost that because the father did what he did.
So they just, you know, and again, you know, Jacob has been serving him, and he says, when we read the text, we take it at face value, so that Jacob is telling the truth when he says, you know, I've served him faithfully, you know, for all these years. He says, I served your father with all my strength, and yet he's cheated me my wages 10 times. And, you know, even the idea that, you know, he gets, just think about Laban's motivation. He cheats Jacob. Jacob is intent on marrying Rachel, and he gives him the impression, he doesn't tell him up front, sorry, you can't marry Rachel. You know, we have a custom here to marry the oldest first. He makes Jacob believe that he's marrying Rachel. And then he makes the change. and for 7 years of labor, which is a lot for him to do this. And then secondly, he'll give Rachel, but he's got to work another 7 years. I mean, he get 14 years of labor, and Jacob's not a spring chicken. He's probably, I think, in his 70s at this point when this is happening. So there's a lot of dirty dealing with Laban. He seems to be a man consumed with wealth and with the material possession of this world, and to even take care of his own kin and to take advantage of his own kin, because remember, Jacob is not just his son-in-law, he's also his nephew, if you remember. You know, it's his sister's son. So
getting back to the dowry, if they were truly supposed to be doing, or if that was their culture to do a dowry at that time, it was Jacob who earned the daughters, not the other way around.
yeah, it's you know, and I don't know
So
the
right
exact.
from that is not right, and particularly if Leah was not attractive or whatever it was, it did not seem to make her appealing. That he would think he would have been wanted to pay somebody to marry her, so to speak.
Yeah, and you know that Laban has the means to do that. He's not poor. He is not poor at all. He's got plenty. I mean, ideally, you would think that Jacob would come there. He'd be thrilled to have this union. He would work it out with Rachel, or if Rachel's not the custom, fine. Well, would you be willing to take Leah, and however you want to work that out? But that he would give him a wife, and that Jacob would be able to work alongside him as his own son. But he takes him as like a hired hand. He takes him as a laborer. And again, constantly changing his wages. And now it's like, and God is ordaining it all. You can see God behind it all. So that if things worked out really well with Laban, Jacob would have never returned to the land. He would have been content to settle there, make a life for himself, because remember, when he left Canaan, his brother wanted to kill him. So there's no rush getting back. But now it takes a situation where Laban is really taking advantage of him and abusing him that will force him to leave. Now it's time to go. It's time to go. So God's sovereignly working it, but he doesn't take, he's been with him the whole time. No matter how much Laban is scheming, God is taking care of him. Laban is kind of like the coyote and the roadrunner. It's like everything he tries just falls back on him, and he can't seem to make it work. It's just not going to happen. He's going to be frustrated every time. So let's pick up the next section here, verse 17 to 21. Liz, would you read that for us?
Sure. So Jacob arose and set his sons and his wives on camels. He drove away all his livestock, all his property that he had gained, the livestock in his possession that he had acquired in Padam Aram, to go to the land of Canaan to his father Isaac. Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel stole her father's household gods. And Jacob tricked Laban, the Aramean, by not telling him that he intended to flee. He fled with all that he had, and arose and crossed the Euphrates and set his face towards the hill country of Gilead.
Okay. All right. So what happens next here? So Jacob sets his sons and his wives on camels. He drove away all his livestock, all his profit he gained. So Jacob takes everything and leaves for Canaan. What about his leaving that is mentioned here? There's a few details regarding the leaving.
He sneaks away. He doesn't let anyone know that he's going.
Okay, yeah. So Jacob sneaks away. He does not let. Can you blame him?
No.
Does not let. He can't trust Laban. He knows that Laban is a man who's been taking advantage of him this whole time. He's a powerful man, and he's not just going to let him go that easily. So does not let Laban know. And so he tricks him by not telling him that he intended to flee. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting way of phrasing it. That tricks him. He just didn't tell him he was leaving. So what else is said here? There's a little detail.
Doesn't sound like Rachel is a believer in Jacob's God.
So Rachel stole her father's household gods. Now, we don't know why she did this. There's a couple theories about this. Did she want to worship these household gods for herself? The household
she's a
gods
little
were,
spiteful.
what's that again?
I think she's a little spiteful.
Could be. There's a couple things, there's a couple theories about why. Is it, one theory is of greed for her, that they were, I'm going to put question marks because we're not told why she does this. We are not told.
Well, one thing is that everything that Jacob is taking is his,
Hmm.
where she's gone and taken something that wasn't hers.
Yeah. So it could be greed. Or another one is, I think the one I'm going to go with is, well, it could be idolatry, that she wanted to worship these gods for her own use.
We
Uh,
saw that in the previous chapter where she was praying to God, but calling him God. It wasn't a very personal thing. She finally calls him the Lord when she
does.
conceives.
She does. So I'm going to go with the most gracious toward Rachel, and that is fear. To prevent Laban from using divination
Oh, no.
to determine their whereabouts.
It makes sense.
I think that is, she knows he uses this. We already know that he uses divination, and it's kind of like, stealing his, his magic lamp or magic wand, or his something.
His Ouija board.
Yeah, his Ouija board, right? And that she's not necessarily intending to use it, and she's not being greedy. She just doesn't want him to use it, because we have no mention after the story. There's no mention of whatever became of those gods,
Well, she
or
hid them.
but the story will go on and say something about those gods that is very interesting. I think the detail, why I think we're not given the reason is because it's not really about Rachel. It's about Laban and his gods, because we're going to see what happens with those gods. So let's take a look at what happens next. So he sets his face toward, he crosses the Euphrates, and he sets his face toward the hill country of Gilead. Let's see if we have let me find my map up here, if we have a map. Is it here? Okay.
No, that's not a good one for
Not
Gilead.
there. The Euphrates that's not helpful. All right. I have to get an updated map here on he was on the beyond the Euphrates, I guess. Which way he would have
Wasn't
gone.
he in Haran?
He's in Haran. Yeah. Is that north of the Euphrates?
I thought
That's north of current day Israel's northern border.
Yeah. All right. So okay, here he is. He's in Haran up here. And he would have crossed, here's the Euphrates. Okay, there's the Euphrates. He crossed the Euphrates and heads down toward Gilead, which is, I believe, in this area here. It's Gilead.
Yeah. No bomb in Gilead.
Yeah, there's no bomb. Okay, good. All right, very good. Let's pick it up there. Bob Thomas, you want to get the next section for us here? 22 to 24.
Okay. When it was told Laban on the third day that Jacob had fled, he took his kinsmen with him and pursued him for 7 days and followed close after him in the hill country of Gilead. But God came to Laban, the Aramean,
Yeah.
in a dream by night and said to him, "Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad."
Yeah. So now 3 days later, Laban pursues. Jacob now for 7 days. Okay. That's a long pursuit there. Into Gilead. And you can see, I mean, he's going to overtake him. He's going to overtake him. You know, he catches up to him and he's about to overtake him. And it's there that God intervenes, as he always does. What happens to Laban?
He gets a dream.
God appears in a dream, warning Laban, be careful. We've seen that before, where God intervenes in a dream with an enemy of his man.
Yeah.
Abraham was king.
There's Abraham.
Oh.
Yep, with Abimelech. You remember? And and again, I think even with Isaac had the same thing with Abimelech, that God appeared to him too. I can't remember.
Mhm.
But God intervenes. Whoever, I will bless those who bless you. I will curse those who curse you. This has nothing to do with whether Jacob did right or wrong, whether Jacob should have said something to Laban or not. The point is, God is faithful to his promises. Jacob's life is in danger, and God intervenes. As he promised him, he would be with him.
So Laban believes in this God?
Yeah, but see, the problem with Laban is not that he doesn't believe that the Lord exists, or that the Lord, but that he worships all the gods. It's like the Hindus. The Hindus don't reject, the Lord or Jesus as God. They just add him to their collection of all their other gods. And so Laban has all his gods, and you have your God. That's fine. But he's starting to realize, I think, a lot of the challenge that has to happen is that the pagans need to realize that the Lord is not just one of their gods. He is the Most High God, the Creator, the Eternal One. And all of their gods are created beings. Some of them are made up, but many of them may be truly spiritual powers, but they're created powers. They're not the one true eternal God, and they're not to be worshipped. That's what I said, when I mentioned before, I think of when I talk with Hindus, and I talked to this woman who was a Hindu, and I said, really, the difference between us is, you believe in all kinds of gods, and I believe that there are gods out there, that there are spiritual beings, powers, and authorities that the Bible talks about. The difference between us is that, we are not allowed to worship created beings, no matter how powerful they are. We're not permitted to worship them. We worship the one eternal God. And that's that's the main difference, is that the Hindus, they know that their gods are created. They have stories of their creation. That's how they came to be. And that, I don't care how impressive they are, you do not worship other gods. You only the Lord. He's the Most High God. And so Laban is not, I think the shock for Laban will be to come to the realization that God is the one true Most High God, and that all the other gods are created beings, and they're useless. And we're going to see that in this text too, when we get a little further down. So, Rob Roy, you want to get the next section down to 25 to 32?
Okay. And Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban with his kinsmen pitched tents in the hill country of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done, that you have tricked me and driven away my daughters like captives of the sword? Why did you flee secretly and trick me, and did not tell me, so that I might have sent you away with mirth and songs, with tambourine and lyre? And why did you not permit me to kiss my sons and my daughters farewell? Now you have done foolishly. It is in my power."
Stop right there for 1 second here. Do you believe him?
No.
No.
Sounds like some politicians that I know.
He's trying to play the victim when he's the culprit.
So Laban overtakes Jacob, and he totally lies. What is the first of his lies? he accuses him of
Trick-
of tricking him and what?
Driving away his daughters like captives.
Driving away his daughters like, is that how the story went?
No, they went,
No, they came. They came willingly.
No, they came willingly. That's right. They told him, whatever the Lord says you do, we'll do. They were very happy to leave to get out of there. And then he says, and if you had stayed, right, what would I have done, right?
I'd have thrown a party for you.
Yeah, if you had told me, oh, I would have celebrated, right?
Mm.
And that is a total lie. You know that's not true. You've done foolishly. And all right, pick it up from there, Rob. 29 to 32.
Okay. It is in my power to do you harm, but the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, "Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. And now you have gone away because you long greatly for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods?" Jacob answered and said to Laban, "Because I was afraid, for I thought that you would take your daughters from me by force. Anyone with whom you find your gods shall not live. In the presence of our kinsmen, point out what I have that is yours and take it." Now Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them.
Okay. All right. So can you feel the humor in this here a little bit? Laban, let's talk about the difference between the Lord, the God of Jacob's father, and Laban's gods. What's the difference?
Well, it's kind of hard to steal the God of Jacob's father.
Yes. The Lord, notice the Lord speaks and to Laban without his even seeking him and calling on him. He doesn't wait to be called upon. Whereas when Laban wants to hear from his gods, he has to go through his divination rituals in order to hear from them. The Lord is the one, and the Lord threatens and is able to severely punish as he pleases here. Meanwhile, Laban's gods,
They're
What about
sitting in a sack somewhere.
they're pretty quiet.
yeah, are mute and have been stolen, and the indignity that they're about to suffer is even worse, because they're stolen by Rachel, and we'll see. Did anyone know where she hides them?
I know.
You know, it's
In her saddle, and she was having her time, and she was sitting on it, so nobody asked.
she's having her time of month here as she's sitting upon his idols. The really showing it really that's one of the main points of this theme is the one true God. Look how he acts and interacts. He moves and shakes. He makes things happen. He's the one calling the shots, and the gods of Laban, all the other gods, are impotent. They're pathetic. They can do nothing. They're so helpless that a woman can just take them and steal them away, and it's pretty funny to see it that way. Jacob has no idea that they were stolen, especially that Rachel stole them. So let's see what happens. So verse 33 to 35. Bob Fowler, you want to get that?
So Laban went into Jacob's tent and then into Leah's tent and into the tent of the two female servants, but he did not find them. And he went out of Leah's tent and entered Rachel's. Now Rachel had taken the household gods and put them in the camel's saddle and sat on them. Laban felt all about the tent, but did not find them. And she said to her father, "Let not my lord be angry that I cannot rise before you, for the way of women is upon me." So he searched, but did not find the household gods.
All right. So the household gods. And this is all we're going to hear, but we're not going to hear any more about this after this. There's no mention of what Rachel does with them after this or where they go. Doesn't seem to matter, at least to this story so far. All we know is Laban searches for them, tries to rescue his gods. And what happens?
Comes away empty-handed.
They can't find the gods. And
That
we're
would-
told,
That would
What's
be
that?
another difference too. His
What?
gods needed to be rescued.
Yeah.
Our God doesn't.
Yeah. his gods need to be rescued. It's like, it really is the case, isn't it?
It's
And
almost like God, it's almost like God put it in Rachel's head to take him, to show to Laban that they were helpless.
Yeah. That's why it's like we're not told how to feel about this regarding Rachel, whether she did wrong or right or what, or if this was a terrible thing that she did or a blasphemous thing, or we're not told anything. It's just that she did it. And the point really is about what it says about his gods. And they are, they are in a saddle bag sat on by a woman during her menstrual cycle. What's the significance of that?
Can't
He
stand
should have
up.
said,
Blood.
he should have said, "Show me your ankles."
She's unclean.
Unclean. I mean, this is the most, humiliating thing that these gods are in this condition, this place. And you can see it. I mean, you wonder about, whatever god these are, that they are, let's say, spiritual entities that are manifest themselves through these little idols.
But you got to wonder if she was lying to Laban because who knows if she really was having her period.
Right. Yeah.
She may have been, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The
think
text doesn't say she's lying. It just says she says it. Yeah.
I think it's the same as men today. They don't want to hear about it, don't want to talk about it. I just get me away.
Yes.
Go fishing.
Yeah. I mean, she could have been lying. But the text doesn't say anything about whether she's lying or not. The text leaves you with this image of a woman having her menstrual cycle on top of these precious gods that have been taken. Just absolute, just humiliation and degradation toward them. It's a sweet justice. There's a certain poetic justice in all of this. Laban is, again, these household, the gods who are in rebellion to the one true God, working their will through Laban. And Laban becomes wealthy and he has his household gods and he learns by divination things. He does. They are real. They're not just simple idols, because remember, he learns things by divination through them. There are these spiritual entities at work in rebellion, powers and authorities that are working through these idols, and he knows that. And the end result is they're impotent. When God moves, they are nothing, and they are less than nothing. They're trash, and they're taken from him. They're helpless, and Laban is humiliated. Laban loses everything, and God, you can clearly see, is calling all the shots here. The Lord is calling all the shots. It's a wonderful thing to remember. And when we were in Africa, and we would in Mozambique, the first few years, there's a lot of fear in these communities because the witch doctors there are really powerful. They have a lot of influence and they terrorize the people there. There's a lot of idolatry, and the people live under superstition and fear. And when we were talking with him afterward, he said, what really breaks the spell, enables the people to be free from the superstition, is when they come across a text of Jesus saying, all authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. He is in charge. He's the greater God. He is in charge of all of this. You have nothing to fear. Yes, there's real power out there. There's real evil. There's real darkness. But the Lord is sovereign. Jesus Christ, your Savior, he has all authority now, and he's working everything for good. And we can see that in the story of Jacob. Jacob is outnumbered. He is completely vulnerable. The Lord takes care of him for 20 years, takes care of him each step of the way. And Laban and all his armies and all his gods can do nothing against him, only what the Lord allows. So
I got curious because of the names of the Bible often point out something about the individual. I looked up what the meaning of Laban is in the Bible, and it is a symbolic matter. It means white, the visual representation of purity without visible stain, symbolizing those without apparent evil motives whose actions nevertheless result in undesirable outcome.
Symbolizing, say that one more time again. So his name means white.
Laban means white.
Yeah.
Symbolizing those without apparent evil motives whose actions nevertheless result in undesirable outcomes.
So he
I would
doesn't have,
think he has evil motives. Though.
he seems to have evil motives.
But I think it's saying that it appears to be white, even though they have that. It's almost like whitewash.
Okay, like he's a hypocrite, like a whitewashed tomb kind of a thing.
Yeah.
He presents himself as having all
Sure.
of being the best intention of being full of love and generosity, but meanwhile he is greedy and conniving and a violent man, it seems too.
Yeah.
So
I'm still stuck on the statues because I always thought they were nothing more than wood. But when you say that they
idols?
could be, yeah, idols, the statues, the false idols, but when Pastor said that there could be, a spiritual entity coming through them, I
yeah,
kind of
so
broke the mind a little bit.
the way that idolatry works is, they don't believe that little idol is the God, but that idol sort of God manifests the God. It enables them to control, gives them a sense of control in their worship. So they have a little idol, an image that they can then offer sacrifices to. So it's very clear which of the millions of gods out there they're invoking. And that God, that they believe that idol or that image sort of secures the presence of that God behind it. So if I it's like a lucky charm to them in many ways. But the reality is, and there's two ways that the scriptures speak about it. One is that idols are nothing. It does speak about that. An idol is nothing. That's why you don't have to worry about it if food is offered to an idol. Idols are nothing. However, the idols in the Old Testament, it does say what they do represent, if you remember. There's something very specific it says about them, that when they're worshiping idols, they're worshiping demons. It speaks about that in the Old Testament.
So when
that link.
I have trouble pulling up names at first. Is it the king before David?
Saul.
Saul. Okay, it is Saul. Okay. The thing that God had against Saul was he went to a witch to get information. And
it was actually before that
Was
he
it?
had, that was sort of his desperation at the end as he goes even to a witch to call up Samuel.
yeah,
But remember, it was when he refused to, in that battle, he told him to kill, was it, I can't remember, it was Amalek the king, or one of the kings there. And
Amalek. What is the sound of this bleeping sheep I hear?
yeah, and he did disobeyed. And the other part was when they were waiting on Samuel to offer the sacrifice, and Saul couldn't wait, and so he went and offered the sacrifice. Those were his two big offenses.
right. But the point that I was trying to get to is that they didn't say that the witch couldn't tell him anything. He said that he never should have gone to her.
Yes. So that's why it's like, I really believe that there are a lot of like psychic things that's just phony. it's just fake. You know, they're frauds. But there is a spiritual powers at work. We acknowledge that we all believe. The Bible is very clear. There are demonic things. Remember the woman with the demons? That was the fortune telling woman in the book of Acts that made a lot of money for these folks, and
Yeah.
Paul frees her from that. That's a real demon in there, and that demon has some kind of knowledge and power. And the gods or the spiritual beings, you know, they have a knowledge that goes beyond ours. It's not an infinite knowledge. It doesn't go to God's level, but it is greater than ours. And so they can tell some things. Yeah, it's some of it's real. That's the whole thing. It's like, and a lot of it's fake, but some of it's real. You know, some of these psychics, they do their cold readings. They have little tricks of determining, oh, I'm getting an M of something, you know, and they just draw it out of you who the person is and everything like that. That's just silly parlor tricks, but there are some real ones out there who.
Yeah,
Real-
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
There are some out there that are in touch with
Yeah.
the other side there, and as you say, not to the degree of God, but they are in touch with the other side. And there was a time when Teresa and I went to a couple of those, and it was, you know, before we came to Christ, but there was a time that we just were out of interest, checked them out, and were just blown away by their accuracy and the knowledge that they did have, and
Yeah.
things that they said that came true after the fact. So it's there's something
Yeah.
there for sure.
Yeah,
I
for
was
sure.
looking in my study Bible, and I've got false gods of the Old Testament. They have 15 listed, 15 false gods.
That are mentioned by name. Yeah.
Yeah, there were plenty of them.
Yeah, there were tons. So, all right. Well, I'm going to stop recording here.